If you're a parent, teacher, or school leader, and you're sick and tired of the frustration, anger, and unfair treatment of children at high risk in our public schools, then perhaps it's time for all of us to do something about it. In this podcast, Dr. Almitra Berry brings you tips, tools, strategies, and tactics to build successful solutions while touching, moving, and inspiring all of us to transform our schools so that every child thrives. Here's your host, Dr. Berry.
Welcome back, Equity Warriors. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to keep on with our assignment to evaluate the impact of Project 2025 on public education and marginalized learners, our assignment. So, Project 2025, that nefarious plan championed by the Heritage Foundation, advocates for dismantling the federal education department. They have been trying to do that. Conservatives have been trying to do that for a long, long time. But what they're trying to do is a threat to public education. And let's start with the threat to funding of public education. The big picture is that the plan would redirect public funds to private schools. Their mandate for leadership is a step-by-step plan. It will reduce support to public schools, and that includes public charter schools, by transferring taxpayer money into private schools, commonly known as a voucher system. Right now, there are 32 states that have implemented some form of voucher program. So don't think that what they are trying to do, they have not already been quietly, subtly doing across the red states. Right now, there are 32 states with some form of voucher program. There are 11 states that have universal voucher laws. There are others on the way, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, all working to push a universal voucher law. 13 states have educational savings accounts, or ESAs. Check into what your state has. An ESA would take the taxpayer money and give it to you or give it to individuals to put into savings accounts. And if you are financially savvy, if you are very responsible with your money, that might be something that you could benefit from. But I want you to think not about just yourself, but about the vast majority of America's children who do not come from homes that have high financial literacy, that do not come from homes that have plenty of money in the bank. And so those funds would just be an add-on and they would be responsible with them. I want you to think about the kids who, during the shutdowns for COVID, did not have computers at home, did not have the internet at home. I want you to remember scrambling to meet the needs of children who did not have electricity to plug in and charge the devices that you sent home. Those are the kids I want you to think about. Those 31 states that have, plus DC, that has some form of a voucher program, can take that money and use it for private education. And I'll talk about that in a second. In 2023, though, 7 states, Arkansas, Iowa, Montana, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Utah, all passed new voucher programs. 12 states expanded the ones that they had. And I want you to listen to this list of states again. And I want you, before I read them, I want you to get a map, an outline map of the United States in your head. Listen: Iowa, Montana, Nebraska, Utah. Got a geographic location? Here are the others: Arkansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina. Got it? Now, those are the new ones. So what's the impact? What's the impact on public school budgets and resources if we direct every child's educational funding share to an ESA? It would rob the public schools of the funding that they need to operate. It would rob the public schools of the money to pay teacher salaries, instructional materials, transportation. It would force tens of thousands of schools to shut down completely or to drastically reduce the services that they currently provide to children. I want you to think about your district and think about the districts surrounding you. Think about the news that you are hearing, because we're back to school. What are you hearing in your neighborhood? Because I know in my neighborhood, I know that in the city of Houston Independent School District started the school year, or was going into starting the school year, with over 1,000 teachers too few to staff their classrooms, with 70 plus principals having quit, walked out because of the heavy hand of the state following a blueprint eerily similar to Project 2025 in the state of Texas. And I forgot to ask you last week, did you text last week's episode to a friend, an educator, school leader, school board member, another parent? Did you? If you did, then I thank you. If you didn't, would you please today text 5 friends, colleagues, educators, someone who believes in advocating for the most marginalized of children, and just say to them, you have got to listen to this. Our ancestors taught us, our elders taught us, each one teach one. I'm going to ask you again, each one text 5. Let's make a bigger impact. All right. Sorry, I meant to do that before. There's a false promise in Project 2025 of school choice. But when we look at what school choice has done, many school choice programs benefit wealthy families, and school choice includes vouchers. I'm going to be real clear here. I am not talking about the tremendous work that's done by so many public charter schools that are taxpayer funded and receive less money per student than the surrounding public school system, regular public school system. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the programs that take that taxpayer money and give it in the form of a voucher and say, you can choose whatever school you want to go to, and you can take your money and pay it towards that $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 tuition. Yes, folks, for those, some of you who've not heard this, there are many a private and religious affiliated school, elementary, middle, and high school, where the annual tuition can rise to as much as $30,000 a year. Now you have to ask yourself, if these people can already pay $30,000 a year in tuition, why do they need my taxpayer money? Why do they need the money that my local school system needs to educate the kids who can barely keep lights on in their house? Because that's what they're talking about. Those are the families that struggle. Remember, I said, I want you to think about the families that during COVID, those kids that didn't have a place to study. For those of you who had to open libraries or put buses out in neighborhoods that were Wi-Fi centers, those kids cannot take the maybe $4,000 or $5,000 voucher that would be equivalent to their annual student allocation that would go to the local public school. They can't take that $4,000 or $5,000 and make up a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 gap to go to a private school. The education section of Project 2025 reads as if it was designed to exacerbate the inequities and make high quality education and an opportunity available to only exclusively to the wealthy. Here's what we already know. Multiple studies have shown that when students use vouchers, particularly the kids I'm talking about, those from disadvantaged backgrounds, that they often perform worse academically compared to their peers in public schools. Worse. Recent studies of voucher programs in Louisiana and Ohio pointed out that voucher students performed worse on standardized tests than non-voucher students. Now, I do have a few theories about that. Who do you think is teaching in those schools? Who have they been teaching to? Who do they want in their schools? Because I'm just going to venture a guess, 9 times out of 10, it is not people who look like me. If we think also about children who live in rural areas, children who live in low wealth areas, children who live in housing projects, in neighborhoods that are food deserts where services are scarce. If you take what they have planned and you execute that at the national level, it will radically increase the existing inequities. You think we have teacher shortages now? Do you think we have too many teacher layoffs now? The disparities that they will create to access to quality education, I can't even wrap my head around. Hey there, equity warriors. I want to take a quick moment to share something exciting with you. You know how passionate I am about equity in education, right? Well, I've created a special space, a safe space, where we can dive even deeper into these crucial topics. It's our Patreon channel, and I'd love for you to join me there. Here's why it's so awesome. As a Patreon subscriber, you'll get access to exclusive content that I will not share anywhere else. I'm talking additional insights, workshops like you would get in regular professional learning sessions, resources that can really amplify your impact in education. But it's more than just extra content. By subscribing, you are directly supporting our mission. You're helping to create more valuable discussions and resources that you've come to love. You're part of the change we're making in educational systems. And let me tell you, our Patreon community, it is something special. It's a place where passionate educators and advocates can come together, share ideas, and drive real change. So if you're ready to take your commitment to educational equity to the next level, I'd be thrilled to have you join me. Just head over to patreon.com/3E podcast. That's patreon.com/3E podcast. Remember, your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue this important work. Together, we can create the educational system all our students deserve. Thanks for considering, and now let's get back to the episode. And yet they promote this choice like they actually give a damn about children who are currently in underperforming schools. But who they're really giving choice to, or more choice to, are private schools. They're not giving that choice to students and families that you and I are concerned about. Giving that money to private schools that already reject students based on things like their disciplinary history, their academic achievement, their religious affiliation. Again, the disproportionate impact is on Black and Brown and Indigenous children, children of low wealth, LGBTQ plus children. And again, for those of you who may say or may believe that charter schools do the same thing, no, they don't. Publicly funded charters cannot deny acceptance or attendance to a child because of their religious affiliation, because of a behavioral or disciplinary history, or because of their academic achievement. They are public schools. That doesn't mean that you can be a disciplinary problem and commit the same behavioral offenses that you would in a regular public school that would tend to end up in expulsion, like bring a weapon to school. I don't care what school you're in. You bring a weapon to school, public charter or regular public, that's an expulsion. All right. Accountability. I'm going to ask you what accountability do the private schools in your city, your county, your state have? Do the kids who attend there have to take state assessments? Do those schools get a grade from the state based on student achievement? So I think back to before, this goes way back. So I'm going to go in the way back machine. Some of you may remember this. Those of you who are younger were probably in elementary school. Now you're teachers. You won't remember this. But before Reading First, before No Child Left Behind, we didn't disaggregate data. We didn't look at subgroups to see which groups of children, Black, culturally diverse, special education, which kids were meeting standards, which kids were performing well or not well on the state test. We didn't disaggregate data like that. Private schools never have. And under their plan, with your tax dollars going to fund kids in there, they still won't. So when I said I have my theories about why kids in voucher systems, kids taking their vouchers in these states already, kids coming from underperforming schools go to voucher schools and end up performing worse than their non-voucher peers, maybe because accountability is not there. There's no requirement for accountability, no requirement to serve students with disabilities based on IDEA, no requirement to adhere to a 504 or an IEP, no requirement to make sure that students meet grade level academic standards, and the ability to reject a child based on their perceived sexual orientation. And they've already been abused. There is misuse of funds in existing voucher programs documented already. In Arizona, for example, taxpayer-funded vouchers have been used to buy ski passes, golf equipment, lessons on how to drive a luxury car. Those lessons cost more than $800 a session. In Florida, taxpayer dollars were set aside for school vouchers and have paid for kayaking and for Disney tickets. And don't take my word for it. That comes from firstfocus.org, and I'm going to put a link to them down in the notes. No accountability. And then there's just the big bucket of inequity. Universal voucher system, what they propose to come from the federal government, would widen the gap between our wealthy students and our low-income students. Taxpayer dollars subsidizing private schools, religious schools, subsidizing the education of wealthy students at the expense of nearly 90% of children in this country who attend public schools. For those children who do not have college-educated parents, children of color, children who qualify for free and reduced lunch, which they plan to get rid of as well. These are the kids who are truly disadvantaged. Another impact that has been seen in existing voucher programs, when we're talking about that population of children, they have lower college enrollment attainment, lower college degree attainment. So what's the cost? Consider also the potential loss of specialized services for our children with disabilities. Project 2025 says that the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, IDEA, which provides annually about $14.2 billion in federal money for the education of school-aged children with disabilities, should be converted to no strings, that is, no accountability, no strings block grants to individual states. So they're going to take that $14.2 billion, no strings attached. Here you go, states. Here's your share, here's your share, here's your share. Do with it as you will. Who do you think is going to lose out? Now, having a child that is neurodiverse is not restricted to certain socioeconomic groups, but those people who already can pay $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 worth of tuition to send their neurodiverse child to a private school or a specialized school, they ain't missing services right now. It will be those that are already historically marginalized, those who lack funds to begin with, who will not get enough money in the form of a voucher to make sure that their child is taken care of. We know that children with disabilities are already systematically excluded from voucher programs. Private schools won't take them unless they're a private school that specializes in children with disabilities. They're not required to provide them the same level of service that's mandated under IDEA for students with disabilities in public schools. And yes, that current mandate does extend to public charter schools. Don't get it twisted. Another thing is that they want to dismantle, get rid of all those federal protections by eliminating the Department of Education. Donald Trump said he wants to shut down the Department of Ed. He has said at rallies over and over and over, it should be disbanded to move everything back to the states where it belongs. What does that mean in terms of protecting our children? Civil rights protections for our children, civil rights protections for you, our educators, our school leaders. What does that do for you, especially those of you who are in those states that have already shown a proclivity to discriminate? The ability to enforce civil rights laws in schools would be scaled back to a point where it is ineffective. They already have stated they will reject gender ideology, and they are still harping on critical race theory, which we know is not being taught in K-12 schools. Some of the voucher programs that are funding private schools, again, because they can discriminate based on race, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion. If there is no Department of Education and Office of Civil Rights to appeal to, if there is no accountability at the state, what have you got? You have a system that is creating an impact or would create an impact on marginalized communities that would take us back to when they say America was great, to when we know was Jim Crow. We will not go back. Title I, $18 billion federal fund supporting low-income students would disappear in a decade. That's the plan. Get rid of it. In 10 years, it's gone. No more free and reduced lunch. No more Title I pull-out, push-in supports. No more teacher assistants. No more specialized, differentiated instruction based in coming from Title I funding. This makes me so mad. I want to cuss. What do we get when all of this happens? We get larger class sizes. We get fewer resources. We get limited extracurricular activities, especially in schools that serve children of low wealth, children of color, in our communities of color, and our white children in rural areas, Black ones as well, but our children in rural areas who do not have access to private school options in their communities, they're up the same creek. Equity warriors, I am begging you. This is too important to just sit on this information. I hope you enjoy my content. I'm thrilled that you come back, that you listen, that you share. But this is just too important to have a feel good, feel incensed, hallelujah, amen, sister moment as you commute to work. You have got to spread the word. Text the link to this episode to a friend, to your family chat. Tell them you have got to listen to this. Now, I've always said like, share, repost on social media. But how many of us scroll through social media? It's like, oh, that's cool. And we keep on going. We don't do the same thing to a text message from a friend. And so I'm asking you to be a friend to 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people. Just tell them you have got to listen to this. And if you texted someone last week, thank you. Thank you. Ask them what they thought. Don't just let it go. Have a conversation. And then join me again next week. Next week, I have a guest. His name is Marcus Aurelius Higgs, and we'll be talking about parenting and caregiving for tweens. You know, those young adolescents that aren't quite teenagers yet, those that we tend to think have lost their minds. Marcus and I are going to sit down and talk about that. So send me a text. I want to hear from you. And as always, don't worry about the things you cannot change. Change the things you can no longer accept. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the 3E Podcast. Now, here's how you can make a real difference. First, smash that subscribe button. It's free. It's easy. Just do it. Second, share the show with anyone you know who cares about education. And third, consider becoming a supporter of the show. Together, we're not just talking about change, we're making it happen. Make a donation today to be part of that mission and change, and I'll catch you next time.